Can you see a difference between how you respond to something like this now, which, okay, isn't a big deal in anybody's world, really, versus how you would have responded to it maybe 15, 20 years ago?
Well, just to clarify, having an interview with you is a big deal.
Oh, so thank you, Ross. You're so sweet.
But one of the things that is part of the work that Garry and I do is we've developed what we call the choice convergence point. And that is relatively remaining in the eye of the storm. Okay, so let's take this situation from this morning as the storm. And if I am going to allow myself to get, riled up, upset, pissed off, whatever the case may be, I'm not going to make rational decisions. It's physiologically impossible. I mean, I know you deal a lot in neuroscience and such, and that's exactly what is happening is when we get upset and we're starving for what we need to make rational decisions. And we've taught this to thousands of people listen, everyone thinks, well, for this big event, this big tragedy or this big storm that I'm going to go through, then I'll use it. I'm like, no, you use it for everything. You use it for the little things because that's when you're practicing for the big things. So if you get in the habit of using the system over and over and over and over again, then it's like you had a guest on who was a fighter pilot.
That's right.
A couple weeks ago that I was listening to. And I'm sure if you asked him, pilots, what are the things that pilots practice the most? They practice for disasters. They practice disasters. Airline pilots practice, things going wrong and things in the disasters that all the possibilities that can go wrong. And the reason they practice that is so when the event may or may not happen, they can remain in that eye of the storm. They can remain calm. And they can make the rational, good choices and decisions that they need to make.
Of course, we do have we have a bias towards negativity as well, because like you're just saying here, people want to be able to get out of a sticky situation when it happens. We want to have the muscle memory. We want to have the reflexes, and we learn those through practice. But I guess the other side of that then is that if we are always looking to disaster, we don't necessarily know what to do with the good things that come our way when they come. We're not prepared for those.
Yeah, and I think that, I think there's been a conditioning that has evolved to not just be looking for the negative, but to dwell on the negative. And I think that's the difference. Right? Is that we can be aware of, hey, okay, the time factor didn't work out the way we wanted to, or the way that we expected. So there was some hiccup there. But the dwelling on that is, I think, where the challenge shows up, where then it turns into a whole story, right? It turns into the whole drama of it starts to unfold from that dwelling of it. And one of the principles we teach in a process we call the infinity process, one of the processes we teach, the first and foremost is we need to have things that consistently bring us back to being present. Because when you're back to being present, that's when you're at what we call the choice convergence point. You're in the eye of the storm. You're in this place where the potential, the possibility is endless. But instead of dwelling on the negative, which we've been conditioned to do, our philosophy is that there is just as many, if not more, and I like to say we're leaning a little bit more on the side of there's just as much, if not more, potential and possibility of something good happening as opposed to something bad happening.
Yeah, there's very definitely a tipping point, isn't there? And I mean, you can see in terms of our evolution, in terms of our brain's mission to keep us safe, that noticing the things that can go wrong is a good strategy. But it doesn't take us into the beyond, if you like. It doesn't take us into a state of creativity or innovation beyond escaping from something, I guess.
Yeah, and you know, the way I put it is that we don't want this. You know, everybody strives for, you know, shooting for balance in life, and we're really not really advocates of that. What we want is, we want a slight imbalance, but we want the imbalance on the side of evolution and growth. Right? So that we're always tipping the scale on that side of things. And so slightly imbalanced on that side, because that's how we've evolved as human beings. When we get to the fight or flight, or the survive or die aspect of it, the reason we've evolved as human beings is because we've always been slightly tilted towards growth and evolution as a default. But the conditioning that we get, you know, that based on society and all these other things, that dwelling on the negativity and building up the stories that, you know, that are just in our heads many times, most of the time, then that's where I think we need to make the shift. I think what we need to do is say, okay, well, yes, there's just as much negativity as positivity, but we're slightly tilted. If it's 51%, slightly tilted towards the positive growth and evolution.
Well, actually, that's a really interesting word that you use there. And I mean, obviously, there's such a huge cocktail of things going on in our brains. It's totally, never any one thing. It's this exactly. And that. There's always multiple. It could be this. It could be that. It could be both.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think this word that you used here, shift, is really interesting, and I would like to. I'd like to see what you guys have seen over the course of the time that you've been doing this work. Is that tilt going in a different direction? Is it going in a new direction? Is it following the same course? And is the tide just moving the way the tide always moves?
Well, here's the thing: is that what we see is that it is moving in a positive and a growth direction. That's what we see. And the reason that we see that is because when we're looking at or experiencing our day minute by minute, you know, we want to pause, interpret, and then respond with all of our interactions. And what you see in society today, a good portion of it, that is that people are almost being engineered to do this reactionary life. I mean, the news, television, stuff like that has always been, you know, stepping it up. You know, if it bleeds, it leads, as they say. Now, when you have social media that is just priming people. They're priming them on almost a second by second basis, because now you are carrying the news, you are carrying the events with you wherever you go.